Hello everyone, Brian Phipps here, engineer at Monoxivent. I'm sitting today with Terry Leffler. Terry's one of the estimators with Crawford Company. They're a contractor located in the Quad City area in Illinois. And the reason the two of us are sitting down today is to discuss fiberglass duct installations, more specifically underground fiberglass duct installations. And we want to bring up the point that fiberglass is becoming more and more prevalent in the industry. Main reason for that being displacement ventilation. For those of you not familiar, the theory behind displacement ventilation is to bring in your supply air at a low elevation and exhaust your air at a high elevation. This allows you to have less cooling load, smaller coil, smaller fan, and stratifies the air inside the room so that we're only cooling the first 6 or 7 feet of air inside the building. Now, of course, because we're transitioning to underground ductwork with displacement ventilation, we need to look at duct materials other than sheet metal. By now everyone's pretty familiar with the fact that if you put sheet metal underground, you're going to have nothing but corrosion trouble. That being said, with fiberglass coming into the marketplace, that means there's a lot of learning to be done by a lot of contractors out there. So again, we're looking at this interview. We're sitting down with Terry Leffler with Crawford Company to discuss how installations go and also how estimations go. Now, Terry worked as a sheet metal guy in the field for 18 years, various projects such as the Kone Tower here in the Quad Cities as well as Western Illinois University. After those 18 years in the field, he transitioned from the sheet metal union to working as an estimator and project manager for Crawford Company. He's been doing that for the last 2 years. So we feel he's an ideal candidate to review how this transition went and how fiberglass is handled from an estimation standpoint as well as an actual installation standpoint. Terry, what was the first project you had where you encountered FRP fiberglass duct?
It'd be the Davenport Public Library.
What was your overall impression of this product when it showed up? What did you and your colleagues think of it?
A little overwhelmed at first. Came in on flatbed semis. We were dealing with large, anywhere from 36-inch round to 20-inch round, double wall FRP. Come in any ranges from 10-foot lengths, 20-foot lengths, large 90-degree sweeping elbows.
What would you say was your biggest concern about the fiberglass duct system?
Just material handling of it. We had to order a telehandler to offload it off the truck, and then it was buried underground, so just making sure all your slopes were correct. Everything had to slope.
Was there any trouble or difficulty getting the duct taken off of the truck?
No, once we started tearing into it, it was relatively easy.
Were there any materials or equipment that were not supplied?
Acetone, buckets, brushes, just different tools that you need.
Let's go a little bit into the trenching part of it, Terry. Was there any part of that that was different than an ordinary utility trench you had to dig for the fiberglass duct?
Yes, obviously it had to be fairly wide. Because when you're doing your joints, you have to be able to have access all the way around there.
What did you guys use as a bed to lay the fiberglass duct on?
Sand.
Had you done any wet layup joints prior to this project?
No, I had not.
How were you instructed on how to do it? Were you provided documentation, or did someone from Monoxivent come out and instruct you?
Terry Cahill with Monoxivent came out and instructed me and a few of my guys, which was fairly simple. Once you start doing it, it was not very difficult at all.
So it'd be safe to say that the fears of the wet layup joint quickly kind of faded away once you had someone on site walking you through a few of them?
Yes, there was concerns with obviously never doing it before and it being underground. How's it all going to work? But once we got going, especially all the guys, everybody got a hang of it, and the install went fairly smoothly.
Could you describe how your routine started out every morning, just setting up for the first couple of joints and opening up the materials and so on?
Yeah, first thing in the morning, usually had a couple of the apprentices. We had made some tripod stands that had wheels mounted on it, so you could set the FRP on the stands and roll them around pretty easy. And I would have apprentices, the pieces that we were going to start with that day, I would have them put them up on the stands and have them start grinding the ends and get them ready to install.
Do you have any tips or tricks or anything that you'd like to share with the audience regarding just kind of what you learned on the process, maybe a little insight to them?
Well, at Crawford we did make those tripod stands, which, and like I said, we put casters upside down on top of some C-channel to where you could set the 20-foot links on top. Made it very easy to roll around, especially when you were doing the joints and the grinding. We tried to prefab as much above ground as possible, tried to eliminate as many joints down in the trenches as we could. We had a telehandler on site, so we were able to put 40-foot links to two 20-foot links together. Just took precaution, and when we lifted them after the joints were made up, on how we raised and set.
Okay, Terry, let's move on to the register boots. Were the register boots supplied in fiberglass for this job, or did you make them out of sheet metal?
They were fiberglass.
Was there anything particular about them that was odd, or could you describe how the installation process went for the boots?
Once we got the hang of it, it went pretty smooth. We just made brackets that we anchored to the foundation and made a little support system that we fastened all the boots to.
Terry, how were the factory boots? Were they insulated? Were they insulated in the field? Did the factory take care of that, or were they left uninsulated?
We insulated them in the field with some 1-inch pink foam board.
When you backfilled around the register boots and around the rest of the duct for that matter, were there any issues with that? Did you have any blocking? Did you need to seal up any of the open parts? Did you do it all at once, or as soon as you had one of the sticks of ducts put into the ground, did you go ahead and backfill it at that time?
There were several. There was quite a few units, quite a few different runs, and we wanted to make sure we pressure tested, so we left them undone until we pressure tested it to make sure there was no leaks. And after the pressure test was done, then we buried them, or backfilled them in with sand gradually as we compacted the sand around them.
Could you go into a little more about the backfilling, maybe how many lifts you used and what kind of equipment you used to compact the soil?
Well, we just used skidster. We had dump trucks come unloading the sand, and then we just used a skidster to place the sand around, and then we used a plate compactor to compact everything.
You'd mentioned earlier that you pressure tested the duct before you backfilled it. Could you go into detail the pressure testing method that you chose to use and why that one?
Here at Crawford we have a pressure testing fan. We just sealed up all the boots, the ends of the duct, and hooked the fan up to it to pressure test. There's formulas that you go by that let you know the amount of leakage. It was fairly simple. No different than a typical sheet metal duct system.
Did you find any leaks in the fiberglass duct system?
There was a few times we found a few. That's why we did not backfill before we pressure tested, so we could get at all those joints. One thing we did have to do, that you have to do when you're burying the FRP underground, you kind of have to figure out where all your joints are. And then what we did was We had everything to slope and the bed of sand that the FRP was going to lay in. Then you got to lay out where all your joints are going to be, and then we came in with a backhoe and took a pretty good scoop out, and that's where the joint is, so that way you can get underneath the FRP to do your lap joints.
Could you describe the method you used to repair the leaks that were found in the fiberglass duct?
Well, there's just a few spots where the guys maybe didn't do a very good job of rolling the material down, so we just grind them down smooth where the bubble is or where the leak is, and then repatch it.
Were you responsible for balancing the system after installation?
No, we subcontract that out.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge on how it was balanced or anything like that?
Well, the registers that we had that went on top of the boots had dampers in them. That's how they balanced them all.
Were you responsible for connecting the HVAC equipment to the FRP duct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you describe how that was accomplished using a hard connection or flex, or where the transition between fiberglass and metal took place?
Yes, we in the where the FRP stubbed up into the mechanical rooms, we had to have fire dampers in the floor, and we just made a transition from sheet metal to the FRP and put the fire dampers on them, and from there we ran sheet metal to the equipment.
Was it difficult or challenging at all to transition from the fiberglass to sheet metal?
No, it was relatively easy. Kind of same concept as just regular sheet metal transitions, and the fire dampers had round collars on them, so we just put the round collars slipped inside the FRP. We fastened them with sheet metal screws and then continued on with sheet metal.
All right, thanks, Terry. Let's move on to your transition from the field to working in an office setting. Have you estimated a lot of HVAC jobs with fiberglass in them ever since you've transitioned to the office?
We do quite a bit of work at Climax. I've estimated 4 or 5 projects that we've done at that facility.
The most common question we have on fiberglass, Terry, or at least one of the most common, is determining the labor cost of installing fiberglass. How do you estimate that?
Well, obviously, doing several projects in the field helped in determining the amount of time that it takes to do your lap joints and the grinding and the gel coating and just different aspects that come into play with installing the FRP.
Do you have any advice on estimation for contractors that have never been exposed to this product before?
I guess what I could say is, well, you just kind of have to take in consideration the size of the pipe. You know, obviously, as the pipe increases, you need to increase your labor time a little bit. It's going to take a little longer. Doing lap joints on 8-inch round FRP obviously isn't going to take as long as doing lap joints on 36-inch round FRP.
If you could compare installation labor of doing a sheet metal job doing next to a fiberglass job, would you say it takes longer to do the fiberglass, it takes less time, it's about the same amount of time?
It takes a little longer. One thing that in sheet metal applications, a lot of times a guy can get by with working by himself if he has the right equipment. FRP is a little different, because typically what you're going to have is you're going to have one guy working at a table making your lap joints up, and then you have another guy in the trench applying the lap joints. So it's definitely a two-man process. And then there's other variables that come into play, like weather. The colder it is, the lap joints are not going to set up. you're going to have to apply heat to them, some type of heat source, to get those lap joints to harden. The lap joints cannot get wet, so if there is not a roof above or something to stop the rain, you're going to have to do whatever is necessary to make sure that where you are doing your joints is staying dry.
Alright, thank you, Terry, and we appreciate our audience's time in listening to this video today. Again, Monoxivent offers many resources for doing the wet layup joints. We include paper documentation with every order. You can find PDF copies available for download on our website. We have about a 3 or 4 minute video that describes the wet layup joint process. We've done things such as Terry mentioned. We've sent Monoxivent employees on site in order to aid your guys in working on this stuff. We've done phone conferences, we've done webinars on request, and all sorts of other information. So if you have any questions about the installation or estimation of fiberglass products, please feel free to give us at Monoxivent a call. Our number is 309-794-1000. Thank you.